For those of you who didn't have an opportunity to meet him yesterday, I'd like to introduce Chris Crass. Chris is the author of Towards Collective Liberation, which is available for sale out in the rotunda. He is an organizer, an activist, an educator, and we are delighted to have him here with us this morning. Thank you so much for being with us, Chris.
All right, beautiful people. How are you all feeling? Yeah, you ready to take down white supremacy? Yeah? You're like maybe around noon. I got something until then. It's really beautiful to be here at this conference and with you all, and just what we're doing as individuals, as groups of friends and comrades, as an organization of ARE, and in our faith is just really vital. And I know that oftentimes we might not feel that we're being vital, that we might feel like there's so much more to be done, there's so much more that could be done better. But it's important to take a moment to appreciate what is being done, to appreciate the significance of the choices we make, of the actions we take, and our coming together like this. It's important to be able to build our capacity for greater action, for more effective work, but to plant our feet on the importance of what we do, the significance of our actions, even as incomplete as they often feel. And so to help build some energy here before I kind of go into some sharing some stories and some reflections, I want everyone to take a moment to think about someone who has inspired you, mentored you, supported your development as an anti-racist, someone who has significantly helped you along your journey. So take a moment to think of that person. All right, just take a moment to appreciate all these beautiful people. And then to know that each of them has had people who have supported them, mentored them, been there in difficult times. And to feel our connection not just to the people who we've named, but the people who have supported the people who we named. To deepen our roots. To deepen our connection to legacies of liberation, of resistance, of joy, of defiance. To deepen those roots so that in times when we feel afraid, when we feel like we don't know what to do, to know that we have roots, that we have people who we are connected to, that there were generations before us who did work, who organized, who built movements with us in mind. When we talk about working for the generations to come, we are the generation that previous generations worked for. So let's take a moment now to just get into groups of 3 and talk about the person who you named. Say maybe a sentence about who they are, but then really talk about how it is that they supported you or mentored you. What did they do that was so important and meaningful? Does that sound good? All right, my friends. Please sit down, make yourselves comfortable. Make yourselves comfortable. So yesterday in the workshop, we did some exploring of our stories of how we came into this work. And oftentimes there was people in our lives who helped bring us, and the reference was used of helping to bring us onto the train of anti-racism, onto the train of liberation. And out of thinking about our own stories of coming into this work, using those as a perspective on how to support more and more people coming on board the train. And so now thinking about people who have mentored us, who have supported us, who have encouraged us, who have taken us more deeply into the journey, thinking about ways that we both already do that in our lives with the people who we're working with in our congregations and communities, but also that all of these are strategies, our insights, our lessons for how we can do this work more effectively. And there's so much that we can learn from hearing each other's stories of how we can do this work. And so again, us being here in this conference is about how we can be doing this work in profound ways in our congregations, our communities, to make systematic change in society. One of the times, for me, of really working with the YRUU world in a profound way was in Arizona in 2010. And my primary job there was to get as many YRUUs as possible arrested. But underlying that was seeing this, and many people seeing this, as a moment, a transformative moment, where not just the handful, the dozens, the few hundred radical, already deeply committed YRUUs were going to be the ones doing this, but to use this as a moment where the YRUU association, where congregations, where the faith movement could see itself as doing something with radical leadership, but with broad participation. To move us along, to move us more deeply into this work. And so before I talk about, I'm going to talk a little bit about Arizona for the perspective of trying to draw out some of the lessons that were really insightful for me and for a lot of other people from that experience in terms of how we can do more of that. And more of that is happening in lots of different places. But I'm going to look a little bit into that. But before I get to Arizona, I want to take a step back and talk a little bit about how I got to Arizona. So for myself as a young person coming into activism, as a teenager in high school in the right-wing suburbs of Orange County, California, coming into activism, I think is like probably similar for a lot of people. It's like you start to learn about all these things that are unjust. It was like the first Bush presidency was launching a war against Iraq in the early 90s, and it was just like learning about foreign policy and about all these things that are so wrong, and learning about, how economic inequality in the United States and being outraged, and then we go to these like demonstrations against the war in Los Angeles, and there'd be like thousands of people marching against the war, and it felt incredible. Kind of coming out of this alienated, suburban, middle class kind of culture to like be in the streets with thousands of people was just like so energizing. And then there'd be like 12 people standing on a corner protesting, for the war. And then like the next day's newspaper, the Los Angeles Times, would say, equal number of people protesting for and against the war. And I'd be like, oh my God, would like all read the newspaper, me and my whole crew, and be like, Noam Chomsky's right. They're manufacturing consent. But just seeing these things, and like being like, okay, like we're opposed to all these things. But then at a certain point, it's starting to become painfully clear that it's not just that there's this stuff out there, there's also this stuff in here. And so in the early 90s, there was the Rodney King brutal beating of African-American motorists by 4 white LAPD officers, and, videotaped, international, it's like pre-internet, but, went viral all over the world, video. I mean, how many people remember that? How many people remember Rodney King or were already active at that time or part of their consciousness. But it was a profound moment for all of us. And we were a mostly white, working class and middle class crew of activists. But the Rodney King beating, it was just sort of like, it was almost as if because I grew up in this you're supposed to be colorblind, post-civil rights era, that stuff was done. And so it felt like this flashback to these some sort of previous era. But I just kind of was like, okay, we got it, this is horrible, police violence is horrible. But then the Rodney King verdict came out. And I remember, watching the news, and it was 30 minutes in one direction from my house was the mostly white, middle class, semi-valley where the verdicts came down. All officers acquitted, no charges at all. I felt the echoes of that verdict when the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman trial was happening, and the George Zimmerman verdict came out, acquitted, no charges. But then 30 minutes in another direction, in the multiracial working class city of Los Angeles, thousands and thousands of people out in the streets, people protesting at the police headquarters. The city erupts in flames. I remember watching it, and I was just so horrified and so angry with this verdict, but it was just I had nothing really to understand what it was. I was just so enraged, and my heart was breaking, and it was my whole colorblind framework was up in flames. And so that night, a crew of us, our group of activists, we're getting together, at my parents' house where we often met, and we're watching the news, and we're just talking about what's going on, and we're so angry but so confused as well. And then the one person in our crew, African American guy, Terence, he comes over to the house, and he was a couple years older than a lot of us, and he said, we all believe in social justice. We're all anti-racist, which, for us meant mostly, being against the Ku Klux Klan and neo-Nazis, which is important, which is absolutely important. But he said, I need to talk with you tonight about what this verdict means for me. And it was a really, it was a spiritual moment. It was the universe, slowing down kind of moment where he was I need to talk with you. He didn't really talk about race too often, directly. But he said, I need to talk with you about what this verdict means for me. And he started talking about his experiences of racism, talking about his experience of being on his way to his high school graduation in a mostly white, middle working class community, mostly white, on his way to his graduation, on his way to deliver the valedictorian speech, so proud, and right in front of the school being stopped by police, who assumed that he was there to break into the cars of the parents who were there to see their kids graduate. And he didn't have a student ID with him. And they didn't believe that he went to the school. And so he talked about his experience of standing in front of his school, just previously going over what he was going to say as the valedictorian of his graduating class. And he's standing in front of his school with his legs spread, his arms up in the air, being searched by these police who are basically calling him a liar. And seeing classmates and their families walking by, white classmates and white families walking by, and kind of looking, classmates looking over at him, kind of awkwardly and kind of afraid to kind of make eye contact, but just, keep going. And he said, he felt the eyes of parents. And not that anyone said it, but feeling the look of some parents thinking, good job, you got him. You protected our cars, you protected our kids. Good job, you got him. And just this feeling of a constant reminder in the society of you can go to this school, you can walk in this community, but never forget your place. Never forget that these are not yours. This is not your school. You're being given the opportunity to be here, but you need to always remember your place. And just talking about these different experiences, and people, it was just like, it was like testifying. And, people were crying, and people were a mess, and people were just like holding on to each other, and the news is on behind us, and it's like Los Angeles is in flames. And it was one of these moments of like, okay, my life cannot be the same again, but I have no idea what that means. But thankfully, I had both a lot of anger and rage, along with the sadness and the guilt to keep me moving forward. And then I had a mentor, because Terence was an incredibly generous guy. And so for the next few weeks after Rodney King, when we were going out to anti-police brutality marches in Los Angeles, these multiracial coalitions, mostly led by African-American communities, and we were showing up. And honestly, there was times where I was like, should I even be here? The rage and the anger was deep, and pain was everywhere. And so moments of being kind of like, should I even be here? But then thankfully there was a crew of us where when one of us felt that way, someone else would be able to say, we absolutely need to be here. And so over the next few weeks, I'd go over to Terence's house, and he had this poster up in his room, up in his house, of all these black leaders. And I knew who Martin Luther King was. Kind of. I knew that he gave a speech about a dream, but that's about it. And I saw Malcolm X, and I was like, well, people always say that he hates white people, but I don't know anymore, because everything I seem to know about race seems to be a lie. So I don't know. I don't know about Malcolm X. But I was just like, who are all these people? And I'd ask Terence. I'd be like, who are they? And he would, the first time, he really gave this detailed, this is W.E.B. Du Bois, this is Harriet Tubman, this is Sojourner Truth, this is Ella Baker, this is Bayard Rustin, and giving me a history of kind of the movements they were a part of, perspectives that they were coming from. He was a socialist, he was a black nationalist, this is Martin Delaney, all these different people. And I realized, I was like, okay, I'm 18 years old, and this is the first time I've ever been in a conversation where a person of color is not only talking politics and history, but explaining the legacies of liberation movements. And I felt this tremendous absence, but it was just like, but I couldn't remember what he would tell me. So the next week, I'd be like, who are these people again? I'd be like, this is Harriet someone. And then the next week, he'd tell me again a little bit more briefly. Third week, I'd be like, okay, one more time. And eventually he's like, okay, look, you're not trying to figure out who these people are because you just want to know more about black people. You're not trying to find out just some interesting things that you can say that you know about black community or black culture. You need to know who Ella Baker is. You need to know who Bayard Rustin is, because they are your leaders. And that was my head was like, whoa. What is that? Because part of me had a sort of well, who am I to even say that they're my leaders? I'm barely even conscious of how racist I am right now. But then this idea that these are folks who are my leaders. And then he said, one of the ways that white supremacy hurts you. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? White supremacy hurts me? He said, one of the ways that white supremacy hurts you is that it colonizes your mind, and it cuts you off from the deepest traditions of democratic struggle in this society. The black liberation struggles in communities of color have put forward visions, developed strategies, built organizations, generated cultures of resistance, of liberation, that are at the very heart of democratic social justice struggle in this country. And one of the ways that white supremacy hurts you is it teaches you and rewards you and socializes you to think that you have nothing to learn from communities of color, that there is no leadership to look to, that there is no meaningful history to learn. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, I felt this like tremendous absence. I mean, has anybody ever felt that? Of like when you start to like come into connection with this history, or someone says something similar to you, this like feeling of like, this like heartache and this emptiness. But Terence was a very generous and very loving and very visionary mentor. He said, this is not something you should be ashamed of. This is something that should enrage you. That you have been raised in a white supremacist society that wants you to know nothing of this history. But I mean, it shook me to my core. And so out of these conversations, the whole like crew of us were like, all right, we were all like about to go to community college, just like, you know, working class, commuter college, community college in our area. And it's like a whole crew of us were like, okay, we're going to start taking black studies. Thankfully, my mom was like, and women's studies. And I was like, okay, Mom, I'll do that too. And, you know, so there was this like whole group of us that started taking American Indian studies, Chicano. I mean, at the commuter school, there was basically one class. You know, there was a whole like, you know, political science, which was all, you know, European political theory and, you know, Western civilization, all these different, you know, lots of different classes and da-da-da-da. But, you know, there was basically like one black studies class, one American Indian studies class, one Chicano studies class, one women's studies class, and so on. But we took them all. And, you know, you have these experiences of, again, being like, should I be here? But thankfully, again, we had a crew that was doing this, that we could support each other and be like, wow, this is like, you know, a few of us, a few white folks being able to be like, this is the first time I've ever been in a space where I was like one of only a couple white people. Like, what does that feel like for you? And just being able to support each other through that. Non-judgmental, but just to be able to support each other with the goal of, again, one of the things that Terence, you know, he gave me a quote, a Martin Luther King Jr. quote, which was essentially, you know, like, if you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. If you can't crawl, like, do whatever you can to just keep moving. So that's what we were doing. We were like, let's just figure out how to keep moving. So in this time of going and doing all these kind of classes, this coalition emerges, this multiracial coalition that was led by Mecha, this like Chicano student group on campus. And it was just called the Coalition. And the first objective of the Coalition was to fight against student fee increases, but to tie it to the massive increase of spending on prisons in California. So incredible amount of money going to prisons, money being cut from public education. Sound familiar? I mean, now it's just the standard. So the coalition emerges, and it was like, okay, let's do this. It's like this multiracial coalition. Let's figure it out. And at first, it was like, all right, we're organizing rallies. We're going to, you know, having these meetings, and things were like humming. We had so much support. I mean, you know, you're like, let's fight against student fees. Basically, you know, students are going to be pretty supportive of that. So we would have, you know, hundreds and hundreds of people coming out to rallies around the student fee hikes. The stuff about prisons kind of like resonated with, you know, mostly students of color and some folks, but that message kind of was harder to really get out there. So we had this coalition, and it is building. We've got some momentum. The school paper is like, this is the revival of student activism on campus. All these like professors, progressive or liberal or left of center professors are like, this is beautiful. You all are like, civic engagement, and like this is like go, go, go. All this support. So out of this, one of the leaders of the coalition, this guy David Rojas, he was really visionary, this Chicano nationalist, but also with this like anti-authoritarian, like let's build a multiracial movement kind of perspective that was really, really incredible. He says, all right, we built the coalition around student fees. We got a lot of support. We're really building momentum. Next semester, let's fight for Chicano studies and ethnic studies and an expansion of women's studies. And we were like, all right, let's do it. And he says, okay, to prepare this summer, let's do a study group using Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States. Let's do a study group to try to help us be prepared and try to understand both what we're up against in terms of historic institutional power, but also how people's movements throughout history have made change. I mean, that book blew our minds. And so we had this study group. And, first one was like, there's 30 of us out in the lawn in front of my parents' house. And we're like, yes. And, the last one, there was like 2 of us on a phone being like, so did you read the chapter? Yeah, I did. What did you think? But still, nonetheless, it was a pretty, it was a pretty incredible experience of mostly reading the book together. But still, a whole like crew of like white anarchists, socialists, Chicano nationalists, all like getting together to do this was really, just even being in the same space together was significant. You know what I mean? There's some head nod. Just being able to be in the same, sharing space was significant. And like some of the white folks were like, I was so nervous that I was going to say something really messed up. But then you have the experience again. And you don't feel as nervous. And then you start to get out of your own head and start to just listen more. And you start to let go of some of these fears. So anyway, our coalition starts off the new semester. And we're like, yes! Chicano studies, ethnic studies, let's go! I think the folks from Mecha and David were a little bit more prepared for what happened. I wasn't at all. The support on campus fell fast amongst white students who were over 50%. We're having our rallies. They're getting smaller and smaller. At the same time that we're organizing these protests, and at this time, there was protests around Chicano studies and ethnic studies happening all over California, all over Southern California. There was a huge Chicano movement that was building and student movement, but this is happening all over the place. So at the same time that this is happening, these small ads were appearing in student newspapers all over California that said, the reason your fees are going up is because illegal aliens are taking over the schools. Save our state. Save our state. This was the beginning grassroots effort that then led to Prop 187 in California, which was a major early wave of anti-immigrant backlash. So, this was a precursor to then SB 1070 in Arizona almost a decade later. Basically, no public services for undocumented people, major criminalization of brown people. So all these ads are starting to appear. And so we're like, okay, immigrant rights, Chicano studies, ethnic studies. But our support keeps dwindling. We have a rally talking about why we need Chicano studies. The next day, the student newspaper that once called us the revival of student activism, the revival of civic engagement on campus, now says coalition separatist group, Mecha hate group, anti-white. Professors who were white, who were supportive. Even the white women's studies professor, I couldn't believe it. I remember having a conversation with her where she said, well, I'm not out there protesting for Irish studies. So we're having these rallies, and previously there'd be 300-400 people, multiracial, lots of white students out at our demonstrations. Well, this one, there's about 30 Chicana students in a circle in front of the president of the school's office with signs for Chicano studies, for immigrant rights, going in a circle. In this time, there's a couple hundred students, white students, surrounding them, yelling, "Go home! Go home! Go home! Go back to your country! Go back to your country!" And so I'm walking up to this rally, and I see this like mob of students, and I start imagining these like documentaries of, you know, racist white neighborhoods throwing rocks and protesting against Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. And they're yelling, "Go home! Go home!" And I was like, oh my God, like I have to join. But I was so scared. I was terrified. But I was also like, I have to join. I mean, this is our coalition. And there was like some other white folks that were supposed to be there, but they saw the mob and they were just like, they were scared, you know? And I understand that. So I start wading through this, like all these like white students. And I join the picket line. And all these white students just start losing their minds. They start yelling, "Race traitor! Race traitor! Race traitor! Race traitor!" Now, granted, I was in fact reading a journal called Race Traitor at the time. About the social construction of whiteness, about how socially constructed people who are white can work to create a multiracial democratic movement to end white supremacy, and we can reclaim our humanity by abolishing whiteness. I don't think that's exactly what they were referring to. So they're yelling, "Race traitor! Race traitor!" And then this guy like gets right up in my face. And he's like spitting in my face, and as he like screams out, "What color's your skin? What color's your skin?" And I was just, all things slow down. And all this like theory and analysis of like social construction of whiteness. Whiteness is a strategy of uniting white people to a ruling class agenda that takes them out of people's movements and people's communities and aligns them to a political agenda that's, you know, all this. I'm like, and it's like all of it's like boiling down to what color's your skin? Like, you are out of line. I am calling you back into your place. Get back in line. Get back in line. And it was like, oh my God, this is like, you know, it's like, I mean, somebody said earlier in the service about like words made flesh. It was like, you know, it's one thing to like read all this stuff and be like, I am pissed off and white supremacy, we got to do something about this and we got to end it. And you're talking to all like-minded folks and you're like, all right, let's make a plan and like, let's do it. And then you're like, like an experience like this, it was just like, oh, like history like reveals itself. Like we are connected. It is here. It is on us. It is between us. We feel it. It is here. And so my next steps were kind of what most self-respecting white anti-racists do, which was to say, I hate white people. I hate them. And I'm going to tell every single one of them how racist they are. And that's understandable. That's understandable, right? That's understandable. I mean, how many people have ever felt that? How many people have ever been there? I mean, how many people like kind of go there once or twice a day, you know? So, I mean, I was just like, oh my God, like, what are we going to do? But reading people's history of the United States became a reference point to think about multiracial people's movements and the possibility of change. So David Rojas, my mentor in the coalition, after this, he says, you know what? Your job is to organize the white people. It's like, what are you talking about? I hate the white people. He's like, he was kind of like, you know, that's understandable. Yeah. It is kind of rough, you know. He's like, but you need to work to figure out how to open white people's eyes to the reality of white supremacy. You need to convince white people and show white people through you and your friends' stories of why are you all taking Chicano studies. We need more and more white students on campus to understand that the fight for ethnic studies, the fight for Chicano studies, is a fight for an education that represents the histories of who we are as a people, and that they have tremendous things to learn. You need to help the white people see that. So I was like, okay, I'll try. But it was a really instructive push. Because out of that, like, you know, we started, you know, we had this like underground newspaper that we were putting out called the Molotov Cocktail. And it was the tagline was like serving one up for authority everywhere. And, so, we started like like some of the folks from like Mecha would like write stuff, but then some of us from like our anarchist crew would like write stuff. And so for the first time, I started identifying in writing that I was white. And I started identifying, like, as a white person, why am I involved in this? And then asking other white people who were part of our crew to also write something about, like, why am I as a white person doing... And one of the goals in that was to break down the normativity of who the white community is. That the white community is a racist community. The only white people I knew growing up who talked explicitly about race were racists. The only white people I knew who named race explicitly were talking about at the family dinner table where with my grandfather, who I love. I love my grandfather. But he was a John Birch Society, right wing, explicitly talking about how we got to get the blacks off the welfare system. We got to get those undocumented. I mean, he didn't use that language, but he used other language. We need to get the undocumented out of our communities who are taking all of our jobs. AIDS is the blessing of God against the gays. On and on and on. And then I was like, well, what I'm supposed to do is just pretend I don't even see race. And so that leaves an enormous absence of leadership in white communities. You either don't talk about race and pretend it doesn't exist, or you talk about it and you're a racist. And so we started identifying as white. So soon after this, I get called into the Dean of Students' office at the school. And I was like, whoa, the Dean of Students, like maybe I'm getting an award or something. I don't know. I didn't even know we had a Dean of Students, but yeah, cool. Like, let's see what's happening. So I walk in and I sit down, and there's security guards sitting on both sides of me, and there's a secretary taking verbatim notes of the meeting. And the Dean of Students comes in. You have been identified as having committed acts of vandalism at our school. You and another, I actually didn't even know who this person was. She was part of the coalition. She was another white person who was actually like a solidarity member of Mecha. But we never actually met. But basically the two visible white people who were in the coalition were being told that in separate meetings that we had been identified from pictures taken of us at rallies, that we had been identified as like putting up these posters. And they showed me the poster, and I was like, that's not even a good poster. And I mean, I was like, I'm not gonna, I didn't say this, but I'll say to you, like, I put up a lot of posters. I didn't put up that one. It wasn't even that great. But nonetheless, he's like, you are going to be kicked out of school. All of your 3 semesters of units will be made non-transferable. You will be fined. And sometime later this week, police will come to one of your classes to arrest you. You can go. I was like, oh my God. I felt so alienated. I felt so scared. I felt so isolated. I felt so powerless. I come like walking out of this Dean of Students meeting, and it was just like, oh my God, I've been like thrown to the ground and kicked, and it's like, I'm going to be arrested at some point this week in class? So David finds me. What happened? I tell him. He says, without a blink of an eye, they're trying to kick out the 2 main white people who support the coalition in a visible way. 1, because they're racist and they think the white people lead the coalition. And 2, because they don't want to see multiracial unity because it threatens the very power structure they operate within. We're going to fight them and we're going to win. I was like, okay. So it was a multi-pronged approach. ACLU lawyers putting up flyers all over the campus that was like, we are the coalition, we will not back down. Chicano studies, ethnic studies, school, education for the people, education for all. A number of other people also started doing things like using slingshots to like break all the windows of the Dean of Students office and things like that. And I just raised that because it was oftentimes in our movements a wide spectrum of activity, and sometimes I actually never mention that. But it's important to be real about the wide spectrum of what people do when they're pissed off and they're angry and they're in resistance. So 2 weeks after this, everything is dropped. Everything is dropped. We totally won. But then the president of the school invites Mecha for the first time ever to a luncheon at his office. And they're like, oh my God, like what is going on? Like, are we going to talk about our demands? I doubt it. So they go into the Dean of Students office, and the Dean of Students says, or the president of the school says, I want you to know that there's a lot of talk in the community of people wondering how it is that such a smart group of Chicano nationalists could be so easily duped and taken over by white anarchists. I just want you to know that there's a lot of rumors and talk in the community about how it is that you let white leaders take over your organization. So they ate all the food and they left. And they came to us and they were like, our leaders, our leaders, our leaders. And so then the white anarchists and the Molotov cocktail, we have a note at the bottom of the next issue. It says, a note to the president, the anarchists want to meet and we want beer. So I say all of this because we continued to organize. There was really difficult moments. There was really painful moments. But we continued to work. And one of the things that became really clear to me was that we needed to break apart the white community. We needed to divide the white community away from white supremacy and break off every single piece we could possibly get and bring it into the wide river of liberation struggle. We needed to divide the white community from this idea that all are racist, that all are united to a non-racist, totally inclusive, white supremacist agenda. You get what I'm saying? Yes. And so we needed to identify as white, to put forward a different perspective. We needed to speak to white people. We needed to figure out how to move from a hatred of white people into how can we actually come from a place of love to connect and move white people. So out of that a crew of us, well, first let me say that I didn't actually know this until not too long ago, that our coalition was able to win on a whole wide range of issues. I talked to somebody who goes to that school now, and she was like, yeah, they actually have like all these Chicano studies classes now. They actually have all these different ethnic studies programs now. And some of the demands around hiring more faculty of color, there's more faculty of color who have been hired now, and actually the like dean of students is this woman of color. And yeah, and it wasn't just what we did, but other students continued. So also in California, Prop 187 did pass, but it was blocked in the courts. But then through continuous organizing of many different people, driver's license for undocumented people was one. A domestic worker bill of rights that includes a lot of undocumented domestic workers was one. And so I say all that because sometimes we talk about the things that we oppose, that we did a whole lot of organizing, and then hopefully we raise consciousness. But we do raise consciousness, but we can also win real victories that have tangible results in the lives of millions of people.